big welcome to Nick onto the podcast. Nick is a phenomenal speaker, communication coach, and has an amazing background and has overcome a lot of challenges and has a beautiful mindset. We first met on Eric Spofford's boat in Miami, which was pretty wild. And as soon as I spoke to you, it resonated like you have a magical energy about you, and I'd say an empowerment almost in terms of like momentum that you give into people. So today I want to dig into that and some of the things you've overcome. And you were also recent move to Dubai. So firstly, welcome here.
Thank you, brother. Happy to be here. We met at a great place and with a great person. So shout out to Eric. There's only a few real ones over there. He's one of them. So yeah,
100%.
glad to be here.
Talking about the few real ones, that's actually interesting to go into begin with. Why do you think some people are very fake in terms of the way they portray themselves on social media, and some people are generally authentic and real? Like, I know as soon as I spoke to you, like, you're just fucking you, and like I'm just myself.
Yeah.
Why do you think some people almost like live a lie?
Yeah, bro, it's a great question. I think my answer would be different if you met me a few years ago. It'd probably be a more aggressive answer, but at this point in my evolution of personal development or spiritual growth, I would just come from a place of compassion and realizing that people only know what they know, right? We only know what we know, and we only know what we taught, and oftentimes that can come from a lot of things. I mean, what if, you know, you grew up in a family where your parents portrayed everything was perfect, but on the inside, everything was terrible. So on an unconscious level, you're programmed to put on this perfect persona when in reality, your whole world's crashing down. So sometimes people don't even know they're doing it. And then other times, right, it's keeping up with the Joneses, that's what they call it. You know, like when you're in proximity to a bunch of rich people and you want to be rich. I would say this, though. Everybody's heard fake it till you make it. I'll say own it until you become it. So be super direct as like, I'm becoming a coach. No, I'm a coach. I may not be at the top, but I'm on my way. I'm building something. So I would say people are scared. They're scared to show their true self, probably because of fear of rejection, fear of hate, fear of comments, fear of being polarized, whatever it is. But the greatest lesson that we can have is the most highest vibration that you can vibrate off of is authenticity, right? The desire for money and the desire for fame are two very low vibrations. And oftentimes, if you don't know that, you and I, we've been in those seasons. Would you agree? We've been in those seasons where a desire for money and a desire for fame was at the highest, and we've gotten it, whatever it is. But you get to a liberating spot when you realize that authenticity is the goal. We were talking about this even before the podcast about branding. Authenticity is the golden thing, because when you're authentic, you don't need to try to keep track of all the lies that you've been telling people and keep up with the same story. But also, authenticity becomes your filter, right? And I think this is really important for brand or a coach, whatever it is. If you could just be you, the people who are going to do business with you, they're going to do business with you. The people who would never invest in your stuff or never follow you, they're going to fall off. And so we call this shaking the branch, especially when it comes to posting content. If you start posting content that's authentic, just know the leaves that weren't really strong are going to fall off. Then the leaves that stay, those are your people. And you don't need a bunch of raving fans. You only need a few to really change lives.
I think that's a huge misconception in particular. Like, a lot of people listen to this, online entrepreneurs, they have a misconception that they have to have millions of followers to be successful. I know piles of influencers in the fitness space who are fucking broke. Yeah, I know we've got coaches we work with who've got 3,000-4,000 followers, make $40,000-$50,000 a month. Like, there's no yes or no scenario that you have to have millions of people know who you are to make money, because a lot of time it's actually having the skill set in terms of giving high value to the right people who will pay you what you're worth.
Exactly. I wish I knew that. I wish I knew that when I started. You know, I always tell my students, learn from me. People like my following, right? It's a pretty big following, but people knew me from becoming a prankster when I was 18, and then I transitioned into bodybuilding, and then I became a speaker. I wore all these identities, and I always tell people when they're starting out, you're actually at an advantage, because if you're very intentional with your avatar and you know exactly who you're talking to, every single person that follows you is qualified. Now you come to me, so I got people from all different areas of life and they're not qualified. So some messages resonate, some don't. I can put out an offer and maybe it'll flop because I wasn't extremely intentional from the beginning. And so I totally agree. There's mega influencers who can't convert at the level of micro influencers.
I don't know what you feel about this, but one of the things I've started to do is be a lot more direct about who the fuck I am. Like, I don't care. Like, I want to make the content I want to make. I want to talk about things I want to make. Like, if people don't like with it and don't resonate, I don't give a shit. Like, I made a piece of content the other week about like why personal trainers shouldn't be fat. Like, blew up, loads of people made reels about it, call me fat shaming. It's like, if you're a fat personal trainer, you shouldn't be fat. That's my opinion. And like, people will resonate with it or you won't. The same thing as that means you shouldn't give financial advice if you're broke. And I think a lot of people are almost afraid to maybe put themselves out there and be polarizing because they're worried about getting negative comments or like pushback. And you've gone from having like 0 limbs respectively to having like a limitless life, millionaire, moved to Dubai, spoke on stage with Tony Robbins, like got a big audience. What would be your advice to people who are afraid of negative comments and also like pushback?
Yeah, just quit. Just give up. No, what I would, and this is just to give some context before I answer the question. This is coming from someone who, when I was 17, 18 years old, and I was a senior in high school, I went from a nobody to I posted a zombie prank. I was immediately famous overnight, and I had comments destroying me as an 18-year-old kid, and I had to deal with that and work through that. Ultimately, the bottom line is, if things in the external world dictate how you feel emotionally, you're a slave to the system, you're a slave to the platform. And so everybody gets triggered. The question isn't, am I going to get triggered? The question is, how long am I going to stay triggered for? And so we're all going to get triggered. You're going to have a comment. It's going to tick you off, right? It's going to piss you off. But it's like, how do I respond and how do I react? And the truth is, the more that you put yourself in those situations where you get triggered, now you get to do the work. People don't realize that. It's like personal development. You only get to use the tools when things don't go your way. And so I only get to work on my emotional state when someone does trigger me. And so what if we shifted our perspective and every single time someone commented something negative, they were actually your greatest gift today because they gave you an opportunity to work. And so that's what I would say is like those people are the greatest gifts because they give you an opportunity to use your tools. But if you don't get to the point where you can control your emotional state and not let things in the external world dictate how you feel, like you will always be stuck. You will always be a victim of the matrix, as we call it, or the external world.
And I think it's one of those things that people are too worried about getting like negative pushback. And I think the biggest disease in mankind is the disease of our thoughts running off into negative realities, which aren't even going to fucking happen. And how many times have we thought, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to go wrong? It never does. And that's where like naturally our brain will get pulled towards the negative, which I think the power of personal development is learning to be like, Charlie, Nick, you're being a fucking retard. Like look from the point of the observer, like at the situation. The reality is it's not going to happen.
100%. I think that pattern, which we all fall into, is oftentimes we give energy towards undesirable outcomes that don't even happen anyway. And so, for example, like people say, well, I have writer's block. You don't have writer's block. You just don't think the post is going to perform once you post it. Or I'm having trouble writing my book. No, you just don't think the book's going to sell once you drop the book. And so what we're doing is we're giving energy towards undesirable outcomes. How many times, like men, she's going to reject me. She's not going to like me. I shouldn't go up to her. You already destroyed yourself before you even tried, right? By giving energy towards the undesirable outcome. So for the people out there, people like you and I, one of our greatest traits is that we do sometimes, but we rarely give energy towards the undesirable outcome. We are optimistically delusional, and we only give energy towards the desirable outcomes. And then people may ask right now, well, Nick, what if I have a desirable outcome and it doesn't go the way that I want it to go? Well, you adopt the belief that everything in your life is either working on you or working for you, but it's always working. And so whether it goes right or whether it goes wrong, it's always working. It's always working. It's always working. So these type of beliefs allow you to have the emotional persistence to be an entrepreneur, to be a content creator, to be a coach, because shit ain't all sunshine and rainbows.
And I think the longer you are an entrepreneur, the longer you are a coach, you realize there's seasons. And in my opinion, you either have a problem or a crisis at any given time. There's always going to be stuff going wrong. And the longer you do it, the thicker the skin you have, the less you really care. It's like, this has happened again. And I think that's also the beauty of something I used to think was a complete waste of time, is life experience. When I was younger, like 21, I thought life experience, I'm fucking bullshit. Like now I'm only 34, I said only. You realize in hindsight the value of experience because, okay, it's like pattern recognition. This happened before, I did this solved the problem. It's like, okay, cool, so just do the same thing again.
Yeah. And
that's, every problem is solvable. And one way I'd actually frame solving problems, 2 things solve problems. One is money and the other is people. So if you can get yourself around the right people and you have money, you can probably solve any problem that's going to come up in your life.
That's really good. Yeah, I totally agree. And with the seasons, there's ups and there's downs, right? The money's up and the money's down. And what that's taught me is when things are going great, don't overly celebrate them, just like celebrate them, right? Like just appreciate it. But like we always talk about, like when things are going really great, we're like, it's about to crumble, you know, like because the pendulum always swings. And so that gives you a sense of peace because, you know, if you're in the dark, there's going to be light. And if there's light, you can anticipate the darkness. And that's what gives life, that's why life's so special is the contrast, right? If you and I came to Earth and had our human experience and we knew exactly when the deals were going to close and every post was going to go viral, it would get boring. We wouldn't want to do it. So the contrast gives us life. But as I say, there's a reason for every season.
And it's that thing that if it was easy, it would have no value anyway. So like if everyone could walk around with a six pack and be 8% body fat, then no one would care. The same thing is if everyone was straight away worth $10 million or whatever, no one would really care. And the point is that things are hard, and that was what gives the value of achieving the thing that separates you from everyone else, and it gives you status, respect, and the other things that men are really driven for, in my opinion.
For sure. I totally agree. I think because you and I have mentors, right? And we're big believers in mentors, and we have a few mentors that are way wealthier and built way bigger things than us. And, you know, you listen to them and they're like, my first sale was more exciting than me exiting my company, right? That first $49 ebook or whatever it was, that thing gave me more of a dopamine rush than the $100 million wire. And I'm like, no way. You know, I'm like sitting there, I'm like, oh, I want to experience it for myself. But you realize that it's like, it's the becoming, right? It's the journey, it's the building. And I think it's funny too, because entrepreneurs, the way that I view us is like, we're little kids and we have this like red ball. And if I had legs, right, I kick the red ball down the street. I'm like, ho, ho, ho. And then I go chase the red ball and then I pick it up and I'm like, and then I kick it again, you know? And so like, we're always chasing. And I think to have a sustainable life, it's like, it's chasing something, but also enjoying now. Like enjoying the very moment right now. All the problems, all the gifts, the ups and downs, like just enjoy now.
And I think that's something that's very difficult to do. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with anxiety. But like, I used to get very nervous before public speaking. And the biggest thing that I did to completely change everything for me was I literally would say over and over again in my head, I'm not nervous, I'm excited, I'm not nervous, I'm excited, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. Because it's the same energy, it's just the way you actually like framing it and your perception of it. 100%. So then I put the same perspective into when I get like anxiety or anything around business. I'm like, cool, this means something fucking sick's about to happen, because it gives me the opportunity to show how good I am and improve something, which means you're going to get to the next level of growth. Because things that then challenge you then force you to get better, that something means you then get more successful. But where I see people who are like super successful and the people who are average, when things go hard, they just hide under their bed and hope for like tomorrow to come. Whereas the people who really go after it, they aggressively attack problems, and I try and like deal with things with like brute force violence to almost like solve them. And I think tackling problems head on is the best way to deal with things in life. But I actually mentioned this before, but I think society's almost had like a pussification in terms of like everyone's been mellowed into being so weak and not to compete and not to have that type of drive.
Yeah, I agree, bro. Like spot on. And like there's this part of me where I think a lot of people have been guided, like you said, by people who don't have the results, right? And so like for those that are listening, it's your fault, but there's also a sliver that's not your fault, because maybe you didn't have evidence that problem solving at a high level is possible, right? Maybe you grew up in a family where you didn't have evidence that you could be an entrepreneur. You know, there's that quote, it's like, if you're born broke, that's one thing, but if you stay broke, you know, if you die broke, that's your own problem, right? And so that's what I would say is like, get around people who are doing things so you can like osmosis, it rubs off on you. But I totally agree. I think what I want to acknowledge in what you said, and so people see the distinction of the average versus the successful, is the meaning that Charlie attached to the experience, right? And so, for example, when people experience a problem, the meaning that they give a problem is that they're doing something wrong. Like, I should probably stop. But like successful people like you and I, problems are an indicator that we're moving in the right direction. That's the meaning that we give it. So problem, ooh, you know, like we get excited about the problems. And so it's the meaning you attach to the experience becomes the experience. The same thing with your public speaking. Instead of being like, I'm scared, the meaning you gave it was, I'm excited, which nerdy brain stuff is excitement and anxiousness give off the same chemical response. It's just the meaning that you give it. And by the way, for those that get nervous or any emotion before speaking or whatever, that's an indicator that you care. If you didn't feel anything, you're probably in the wrong thing.
And I think even from a business perspective, a lot of people aren't interested in their business because they don't really give a shit. When people are trying to do things just to make money, they will never be successful. And like, people try to manifest objects and cars and watches and all this shit. I'm trying to manifest the man that I want to be, who can then change people's lives and give value. And like gives me almost like goosebumps to say that, because that's the way I try and think. And I get excited about getting up early and focusing on working on myself first so I can make myself better than go and help other people. And I know if I help 1 billion people, I'll become a billionaire. Like that's the framework I try and think of. If you can give enough value to other people in whatever realm of life, you will eventually get everything you want.
100%. And what you described was like the be, do, have. But most people do it opposite. They're like, I want this, how do I get it? Versus starting with the be, who do I need to become in order to attract the things to me, right? And what's interesting about the watches and the cars is with manifestation is you're focusing on the object, but in reality, you just need to focus on the feeling. Like, can you feel grateful for something that hasn't even happened yet? 100%. And so what if you programmed or meditated or primed your body every single day that you're like, I'm so happy I'm a billionaire. You know, like you already feel it, right? But oftentimes we put the emotion so far away. It's like, well, when I get the watch, then I'll feel good. When I get the house, then I'll feel good. It's like you're robbing yourself of the experience now. And so you're right. When you can be in that energy before you even have the thing, you draw the right places, the right people, the right opportunities to you. And I know that sounds woo-woo, but take it from the guy with no legs but arm who made a bunch of money and doing his thing. It works. And so become the person that can attract the $1 million. Become the person that can close the deal. Become the person that can get the girl.
And I think in that process is the most important thing, because I'll give a good example. I bought a Ferrari maybe 4 months ago.
Congrats.
And it's pretty sick. And then like maybe a week or two ago, I was sitting there, I was like, don't make any fucking difference. Something I wanted like since I was a kid. Like go to the gym, go to whatever. Like if I had another $20 million, nothing changes. I do the same thing every day, make content because I enjoy doing it. I love helping people. I go to the gym, I do boxing, eat my meal prep stuff. So like, why do sometimes you drive yourself insane with chasing crazy stuff? Whereas if you actually just focus on the here and now and you getting better at the process of stuff, you move forwards way faster, which is why I try and think about the expression that slow is smooth, smooth is fast, rather than like probably previously younger version of Charlie was like trying to fucking hammer a nail into everything all the time. And it was just like messy action everywhere, which got me to a certain point. But for anyone listening to this as an entrepreneur, like you through different stages will need to change your approach. Like at the beginning, messy action, if you haven't got a fucking clue what you're doing, you're going to have to do that because you've got time, you've got energy, just go and do shit and something will work. When you find what works, do more of that. And at a certain point, you have to be a bit more strategic with what you're doing. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think there's two archetypes for men. It's like warriors and then there's a samurai. And for our younger ages, we were in warrior, right? Yeah. Hammering, slamming, knocking door, whatever it takes, busting down doors. And you know, it's you pushing against the 3D world. If I get like nerdy with it, it's like you pushing through the 3D world, and you can get specific results, but then there'll be resistance. You're like, why is it so hard? You know, and my biggest breakthrough, if I could just share this real quickly, was I was doing inner child work with a coach. And, you know, she sat me down and she's like, you know, we're going to have to access parts of you that you haven't accessed. And I'm like, I'm an open book. And she's like, would you agree like life was hard? I like laughed. I'm like, yeah, life was pretty hard. She's like, what was hard about life? And I like pulled out this big book. No, I'm just kidding. And I was like, you know, dressing myself, feeding myself, getting the girls, getting in shape. And she said this, she said, because everything in your life has been hard, anytime something is easy, you sabotage it or you're skeptical of it.
That's interesting.
I said, whoa. And she's like, when the relationship with the girl is easy, you don't want it. When there's a business idea and an offer that hits and it's so elegant and so flowy, you think there's something wrong with it and you break it. And she's like, but what if things could be easy? What if things could be playful? What if things could be flowy? What if things could be effortless? And I was like crying, right? Because of massive breakthrough. And so I think life gets easier or more fluid or more flow state when you understand that you can only control the input and surrender to how the chips are gonna fall. Like that's where the magic happens, right? If we knew exactly how things were gonna manifest, like I said, it would be boring, but you don't invite the magic into your life. Like, have you ever had a moment where like a client just fell into your lap or a massive deal or a girl like out of nowhere? I don't know about you, but I want more magic in my life. And if you wanna invite more magic into your life, just control the inputs, the 20% that really moves the needle forward, and just surrender, which is really hard. I think for a lot of us, especially entrepreneurs, we're trying to grapple business and we're trying to control all the outcomes. And our greatest lesson is just, I'm going to control my input and I'm going to surrender to how it's going to fall in place. And that's where the magic happens.
I couldn't agree with that more. I would say most people, entrepreneurs, are naturally control freaks. I certainly am. Undiagnosed. I would probably try and hide it, but I am. And we have a pretty big team of like 40 people and stuff just goes wrong all the time because of the amount of people. And I get incredibly pissed off. Well, I used to get incredibly pissed off in terms of things going wrong all the time. But now I just try and reframe that this is a different perspective in terms of where business is. You can either have control, you can have growth. And as you said, you just got to go along with the ride and just try and fix the bumps out as they go, because things are going to go wrong regardless whether it's you just doing it or... I'll give you an example. I sent an email out yesterday to our email list for this 8-week fat loss challenge we've got. And I text our text guy. I was like, "Oh, did you check the payment link?" He's like, "Yeah, it's fine." Send the email out. Link doesn't work. I was like, "For fuck's sake!"
We know that.
So I was like, literally, I was just like, "This is," you know, when you're like, I could throw the laptop out the window, and I was like, you know, like I knew I should have checked this, but I was just like woosah, just like it's fine, and then you just send it again tomorrow, it'll be fine. But this is the reality. Like these things are going to happen over time, but it's your ability, like you said earlier, not to get triggered by everything. Because mastery, in my opinion, and flow state comes where you don't get triggered by things and you can control like your emotions, have equanimity. Because last thing you want, like if you have a business, your employees are going to trigger you, social media is going to trigger you, fucking business results is going to trigger you, just shit going wrong is going to trigger you. Your life is going to be like a headless chicken.
Yeah.
And the goal is not to be the headless chicken so you can make good decisions.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of the greatest lessons, right? You can learn. And I think, you know, there's a technique in communication, but you could just use it in life, and it's called a disarm. Not making a joke, right? But like a disarm, in the sense that anything that you think is a weakness or an inadequacy of yourself, just put it out there in front of it and use it as a teaching lesson, right? Like I'll give you, you know, even in that example, it's like you could send an email and be like, learn from me. Always double check, you know, dot your I's and cross your T's. I actually sent out that email a few hours ago, and guess what? For you to sign up, it didn't work. And I turn it into a lesson, right? Or for example, like I do these 2-day workshops on communication, and my standard is Tony, right? So I'm like, I can't have notes and I can't have an iPad. And I'm like, Nick, you're Nick, right? Like just be you. And so the first thing that I did was I sat down, and my students are here, and I was like, I'm here to over deliver for you. And if I'm going to over deliver and keep us on track, I need to make sure that I have my notes here. So with your permission, is it okay if every now and then I look down at my iPad to make sure we're on track? Yeah, Nick, we don't care. I just use what I thought was my weakness as a leverage or a pillar of over deliver, right? So anything that is you think is a deficiency or inadequacy, throw it out in front as a strength, and it totally disarms the crowd.
You mentioned that in terms of communication. Obviously, that's one of your superpowers. What do you see is the big challenge people have with communication when they're trying to deliver on content, for example?
Trying to deliver on content?
Yeah.
I would say probably the biggest thing is they're out of touch with their people's needs. I think oftentimes we're creating content or curriculum or courses based on what we think people need rather than collecting data. You know, I think we need to realize that our people have all the answers. And if I can become more obsessed with your problems than you even know, then I can create content in a way where when you listen to it, they're like, it's like he's talking to me. And that's how I do it with even in keynote speeches in corporations. Most speakers or most content creators will just be like, this is my speech, or this is my content. Me, I'm like, what are your needs? What are your problems? What are your challenges? What are your roadblocks? And then I craft my content around those things so it lands. So I think people are just more big-headed and think they know it all rather than probing and diving deep with their people. I think that's the biggest one. It's like your people have the answers. They have the gold. Survey your email list. Ask them questions. What are their problems? What are their challenges? Get on calls. You know, we call this getting into the trenches. It's like if you don't know what to teach or what the course should be, jump on one-on-one calls and shut up and listen. Record those calls. Have people pull all the language. Use it for marketing. Yo, by the way, there's some gold right there. So if people ain't writing some notes, like it's like literally your people will give you your content. Your people will give you your course curriculum. Your people will give you the language you use in your copy if you pay attention enough.
I can give you the best example. I can still remember the person who said it to me and where on a fitness sales call. I was sitting in Surrey in my little wooden shed office in my garden at the time. And the guy said to me, he's like, I just don't know what to eat, when to eat, and how much. I was like, that's a fucking great marketing line. And I used that, I just rinsed that for so long. And this is where most people don't have the like perspicacity in terms of actually like looking around of like what's working, what's not working, and being hyper aware. They just almost have this like blinkered view with everything. And I think that's actually because they're looking from a selfish point of view of not really listening and trying to help someone. Like if it's a sales example, they're almost just like, yeah, shut up, I want to ask you the next question. Yeah, shut up, I want to ask you the next question. Rather than really taking in what they're saying.
100%. Tell me more. Right? What are your challenges? What are your problems? Where are you now? Where do you want to be?
Anything else?
What? Anything else? Yeah, anything else? What type of coaching do you like? Do you like group? Have you ever paid for a coach? It's like and this is another superpower of communication where a lot of speakers, a lot of people go wrong is the greatest leaders and the greatest communicators, they don't give people answers. They ask the right questions for them to find their own breakthroughs and their own answers. Especially as men, if I'm sitting here, I'm like, Charlie, you need to do this and this and this. You're kind of like, get the fuck out, right? But if I was like, well, what comes up for you? Or, what do you think this would be? And I curate a right question to lead you to your own breakthrough, you will take much more action on your answer versus my answer. So that's one of the greatest superpowers, even in keynote creation or communication, is like, what thought-provoking questions can I ask that are going to lead to a breakthrough? Because if I can give someone a breakthrough, they will always remember how I made them feel in the aha moment. And that's something that people, you can't really pay for. It's invaluable, right? I even know that with high-level individuals, whether I'm with a millionaire or a billionaire and we're having a conversation, I can't buy them anything, right? They can buy anything that they want. But if I catch their language and I go, what was that? What do you mean, what was that? And I talk to them in a direct way and I show them a blind spot that they haven't seen, they'll keep me around forever because I gave them a gift that no one can give them.
What's the best question you've ever asked anyone?
Immediately the one comes to mind, which is I learned from my mentor, is asking someone, whose love did you crave more, your mom's or your dad's? Can I ask you that? Can we go here, just me and you?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll just play a little bit, right? Growing up, you had both your parents.
Yeah.
They're both around.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, let's just go nerdy here. The conscious mind's going to be like, I need to get the fuck out of here, right? So I want you.
But then you have to use your intellect to try and pull it back in.
Yeah. But the subconscious mind, whatever the first answer is, like no analyzation. Whose love did you crave for more, your mom's or your dad's? Your father's. Yeah. Okay, great. So, who did Charlie have to be, or how did you have to show up in order to get praise from your father or love from your dad?
Results and achieving stuff.
Results and achieving stuff. And go on, what else?
And I will say one of the most profound things that I will remember till I die. He never really praised me until maybe like a year or two ago. And I'm now divorced and with another partner. But he said, like, you've achieved a hell of a lot, but it's cost you a lot. And I was like, fuck. I was like, it was like a compliment, but a bit of a dig at the same time. And I was like, that was interesting.
Yeah.
But I think that's not from a point of not love, but I think it's a generational thing from someone who's 75. They don't show emotion in the same ways from people maybe from a generation 20 years later, which when I was younger, I probably didn't have the emotional intelligence to understand, but now I'm just aware of and just take it for what it is.
100%, right? So a few things in that, right? It's like your dad only knew what he knew, and he was doing the best with what he knew in his specific conditioning. Also, sometimes they don't know how to express love, or we could be like, well, I wasn't supported. Well, they supported you, but not in all the ways that you wanted to be supported. So the follow-up question would be, based on results and achievement, where in your life have you been so obsessed with results and achievement that you thought it was going to equate to love? Because unconsciously, right? It's like Charlie can have an unconscious rule that the only way that I get love is if I have results and achievement.
I agree. And I actually think that's why, unless I'm moving forwards, I beat the living shit out of myself in my head of like, you're a fucking waste of space, unless I'm progressing. Everyone else would be like, well, you've done all this other fucking shit. Why are you giving yourself a hard time? I'm like, well, he's done this, I should be further ahead, blah, blah, blah. Like, and this is where I said earlier about your conscious mind will like run off on fairy tales of bullshit, but the goal of personal development is to like reel that back in to come back to sanity.
100%. So I appreciate your vulnerable answer, right? Leading from the front. And so I would say, if I was coaching you, is to love all parts of you, right? So I love that part of Charlie because look at your life, right? But also there needs to be a part of Charlie who just is like, yo, good job. Like even if I didn't do anything today, well done. But you see that version of you got you to a specific way, but sometimes it's not fun because it's like I'm always running after something. And it's like, what if I could just know I'm loved every day, regardless of if the invoice hit or not?
And I think that's actually something interesting. Another speaking coach I'm working with said to me is like, you need to have more self-compassion for yourself. Like that will help you a lot going forwards. And I took a lot from that. And the way even I try and reframe that in my mind is like, my life is a holiday. I get to choose what I do when I want. Yeah. Like, it's my conscious choice to be here. It's my conscious choice to work this morning. And when you start to think like that, you realize that it doesn't really matter if you make an extra million this year or you make an extra 2 million this year or whatever, you're still going to get to where you want to be, but just time hasn't caught up yet.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, my mantra is like I have everything, just time hasn't caught up yet, whatever it is. But yeah, so that was a little dig into the brain. It's like, where did that come from? How does it show up in my life now? What is the pattern, and how can I utilize that pattern to recreate a new one?
And I think this is something I've been doing a lot of work on personal development, maybe even the last few months. Your external success and the way you behave is a reflection of your internal environment. And that's probably something I just buried with like fucking drive and action and fucking testosterone to get me to like where I wanted to be, until I suddenly realized like that won't serve me anymore, and you have to learn to work in a different pattern to then get to the next ladder up.
100%, bro. And I always tell people too, like all the things that I built, like, Nick, how are you so successul? I was insecure as fuck, you know? Yeah. It's like I thought that if I build big things, I'll be loved. Yeah. You know, that was very similar. It's like, oh, if I'm a millionaire, then my dad will give me the love that I wanted, or then the girls will love me if I get this, right? And you realize that you can't fill a spiritual hole with anything materialistic. And I think that's a good lesson for people to learn. I don't know if you're similar to me, but I never believed people when they're like, money doesn't solve all the problems. Like, there's no way. Yeah. I'm like, bro.
See the sad person on a jet ski.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, but then you get there and you realize like, there's still work that needs to be done internally. And you're right. The internal world is a mirror to the external world. And I'll just share this. I learned this from Wayne Dyer. You know Wayne Dyer? Yeah. So Wayne Dyer just said, go. He's got a ton. I don't know. But just spiritual principles. And he said, most people's manifestation or wish or prayers to God, whatever you believe in, is like a vending machine. Meaning they put in a quarter and they're like, gimme, gimme, gimme. And if we're believers that the internal world is a reflection of the external world, when you go, gimme, 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 universe turns around and goes, no, you gimme, gimme, gimme. But what if you shifted and every single morning and your mantra throughout the day was, how can I serve you? How can I serve you? How can I serve you? The universe turns around and says, no, how can I serve you? And that totally changed my life, right? Ask the right question, get the right answer. So for now, I meant for the rest of my life, my mantra is like, how can I serve today? How can I serve you? How can I serve you? And then the magic happens where there's opportunities for me to serve people. I can have anything I want. Because my belief is similar to what you said. If I help enough people get what they want, I can have anything I want in my life. I'm going to serve my way to the top, and that's going to be my number one value.
I agree with that massively, and I think something else I am a big believer in is karmic debt. So not doing things that are essentially going to put you in almost like a deficit of you owe someone something, or from a karma perspective. So don't do anything that goes against your values or against your morals that you think you wouldn't be proud to say to someone you've done. I think that's where people don't sometimes understand the world is a funny place in terms of, you mentioned earlier, like deals just land on your lap and people get lucky. Normally, like most time happens to people who are good people, like because the stars align for the right people.
100%. Yeah. And I think sometimes we get into slippery slopes where there is a moment where like there could be a big upside, but maybe your values aren't aligned with it. And those are all tests, right? To see if you're going to be a good person or be a not person. So everything's a game, everything's a test. But there's going to be, even as we move forward and we walk outside these doors, going to be very tempting moments where there's a massive upside, but maybe it's not ethical, right? And those are those defining moments in your life.
A lot of people struggle with excuses of why they're not successful, and respectfully, you've got every excuse pretty much under the sun. What would your advice be to have like a no excuse formula in terms of being successful and just getting shit done?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the excuses, if we break it down, they're just the brain rationalizing, and it makes you feel better. You know, even me, bro, like I'll post a video of me shirtless and I'm in shape and people are like, well, he doesn't need to skip legs, so it's easier. I'm like, oh, is that the story that you use to make you feel better about your gut and I'm in better shape than you? And so people just have to be very aware, become more aware that their brain is always rationalizing. You and I still rationalize about our goals. It's like, oh, maybe I just do this, or maybe I should do that. Like, we're always rationalizing. So I think excuses are rationalization. And at the end of the day, it's not a lack of resources that's your problem. It's a lack of you being resourceful. And one of the great things that we just need is evidence, right? Evidence that it's possible, evidence that you can do it. And I think that's where people fail, is they're not willing to suck long enough at something to be great at it. They're not willing to get rejected on sales calls until they get the first yes. And by the way, you know how powerful the first yes is. Your whole life changes. Or the first date, or the first business idea, the first corporate training, the first keynote. It's like, if you're willing to go through that season of suck until you get that first yes, it's not even the money that you get from the first yes that's going to change your life. It's the proof of concept, right? And I think in business, all of us are looking for proof of concept. There's a unique, I just taught my students this, a unique way for people to kind of eliminate excuses using AI, which I thought was pretty cool. But basically, whatever you want to achieve or whatever your excuse is, it's like, for me, right? I could be like, well, I can't have a good relationship because I have no legs and one arm. And then I type in on ChatGPT, give me scenarios of real people and fantasy people all over the world of different net worths that have physical challenges but are in a really great relationship. Gives you all the evidence. And so, like, if you want, you could just disarm all of your excuses by asking the robot, because it'll give you a bunch of evidence.
And that's why I try and say to so many people, like, particularly we work a lot of people with fitness coaches, is that you want to make 10K a month, 50K a month, 100K a month, whatever. It's like, and you're bitching and moaning, it's hard. It's like, all these other people have done. I've personally done it. I've helped fucking probably 500 other people do it at this point. Like, it's clear that it can be done, and the only reason it won't work is if you don't do the work. But people, from my perspective, are too afraid to take the first step and, like, jump off the fence and just give it a fucking go. And there's a difference between the people who crush it and the ones who don't. And I'll give an example. A guy signed up actually to work with us on Sunday. He's an HGV driver, doesn't even have an online business. Signed up on Sunday, he signed up his first client on Monday the next day. Didn't even have an online coaching business, just exactly whatever we said, bang, sold someone straight away. I was like, I fucking love shit like that. Because you know you said about proof of concept?
Yep.
That guy now is so motivated. His name's Tom Atkinson. He actually messaged me on IG before this. He's so motivated because he's got momentum. He's like, holy fucking shit. I remember the first time I saw something online, I literally woke up and I was like, someone bought a fucking ebook that was like £10. I was like, this is dope.
I'm rich.
Yeah. And I was like, it works. And I think that's, and I can see it in your face, you have the similar experience, right? And that's where the job of a coach is to give someone that point of enlightenment, to see the like light at the end of the tunnel. Because when you can see that, you then get the drive and you get the hunger to be like, cool, I can do this.
100%, bro. And that's why, like, what you and I do for people is, even if they don't have the belief in themselves, they can borrow our belief. Borrow my belief, borrow Charlie's belief until you get the results, and then you'll be on your way. But it's like, that should be a competitive advantage, realizing that most people won't go through that season of suck. And if you can just get the one, if you can get one yes, you can get a million yeses, right? But I always tell my students, will you be persistent enough to get the result that you want, or will you just quit? For some people to take a day, for the guy it takes 2 days, for some people to take a month. But it's like, will you persist until you get it? Once you get it, watch out, because here it comes.
And I think it's important in particular for men to challenge themselves. And I would say, like, I've started doing a lot of boxing, jiu-jitsu, goal is to have a boxing match next 6 months or so. It's like, I want to start something I'm shit at, because it's completely humbling. And then I did jiu-jitsu with a guy who was like 70 kilos 2 weeks ago. And like, I rinsed him for like the first 3 rounds. By the end of it, I was so fucked he'd beat me in the end. But he's like half my size. And this is the reality in terms of, like, you have to be willing to leave your ego at the door in some of these situations. And it also, I think, gives you a lot of very good perspective in life by putting yourself into different environments and different scenarios where you're no longer maybe Captain Big Shit or whatever you do at public speaking or fitness coaching or whatever it might be. And you're like back as a beginner, because it makes you think from the other perspective, even with what you do.
100%, right? I think true masters, the reason why they're masters is because they're able to go from master to student again, right? And you and I are like just students of the game, and it's fun to do something that is really hard and you suck at it, right? And I think especially here, you can get soft here, because everything's amazing, right? Yeah. So everything's amazing, and so it's important for you to like do things that bring out the dog in you, especially for the men.
I would say one of the downsides of Dubai is it can make you incredibly weak and fragile as a human being. And I even probably caught myself in this maybe 12 to 18 months ago. So I got a housekeeper, all my food gets delivered. I don't cook or clean anything. I'm like, you're like one of those like spoiled rich kids almost, but as an adult. And I was like, you need to do some hard shit. And that's where, like, now as like a man, I try and do stuff that's really pushing myself in my comfort zone, whether it's like training really fucking hard and killing yourself in a rowing machine, like ice baths and fucking fighting or whatever, to try and find challenges in life. Because I think having that like stress tolerance to put yourself in those environments where this is really difficult and you feel uncomfortable doing the thing, whether it's even speaking on a podcast or speaking on a stage, is really where the next level of actual like personal development growth comes. Because it's almost like hardening the layer of your mind to be like, cool, well, I did that was really uncomfortable, so I could probably go and do this as well. And then you're no longer afraid of things.
100%. Self-induced chaos, right? It's like your ability to handle chaos is directly correlated to your level of success. And I did a post on this where I was doing MMA, like just like, you know, just hitting mitts. And I'm like, you're probably wondering like why I'm training MMA. I'd probably lose every single fight. Maybe I get lucky, right? But I said it's not for me to go fight. It's for me to feel dangerous in my body, for me to feel like a man, for me to feel dangerous, for me to feel like I'm sharp, because those characteristics I'm going to bring into business, right? And so it's like, even having no legs but arm, I still want to feel like a G. I still want to feel like dangerous. I still want to feel in shape. Or people ask me, they're like, why do you work out? Like, what's the point? I'm like, well, one, I want to look good naked. Two, I want to look good better than you. And I want to be part of the 1%. But ultimately, life gives you exactly what you think you're worth. And so if I'm jacked, I feel way better, and it's going to translate into all the other areas of my life.
Bro, like, if you're a man who listens to this, two things make life much easier. One is being in really good shape, and the other is having money. If you put the two together, like, a lot of problems tend to disappear. And I'd say, if you can look at yourself in the mirror, like, you have respect, confidence in yourself, the other areas of your life then become easier. It's when you look at yourself in the mirror and you have shame and guilt, that then leaks into the other areas of your life, a fucking cesspit, and almost like rots you from the inside, where people then have the internal belief issues. And I think that's where a lot of people don't have the ability to like delay gratification in terms of sticking to the diet, doing the training, hiring coaches. I've fucking about 10 million coaches I work with different things at the moment, because like you said, I'm constantly trying to learn and get better at everything, because that is the game in terms of what I said to you earlier, of like manifesting the man I want to be. I could do it on my own, or I could get this fucking A team of people who can help me in every different aspect, and then I level up faster and faster, because the goal is to become like Super Saiyan in life, like Dragon Ball Z, so you can then get to like the top level. Do you know what I mean?
100%, bro. And we're trying to go fast, right? It's like, even for me, my main goal is like take care of my bloodline, right? Get them out of the system. And it's like, every day I wake up, I'm like, they're waiting. You know, they don't know, but it's like they're waiting. And so we're trying to go fast. And as you know, just find someone with the information, invest, do whatever you can to condense time and get the information.
Why do you think some people have such a fear about getting someone to help them or coach them? Because even, for example, I remember when I first started my business, and maybe even started having someone coach me for fitness, my family, for example, would be like, why are you paying someone thousands of pounds to help you build a business? Why don't you just go and do it?
And yeah, they don't have businesses too, right? So that's a big thing. Most people are taking advice from someone who doesn't have the life and the results that they want. I think as well, there could be unconsciously the programming of asking for help means you're weak, right? Take it from a man with no legs, one arm, right? Like, there's a lot of times where in my life, I thought asking for help made me less than a man. I want to be Mr. Independent. And then you get to a point where like, what's most efficient? You know, what's the most efficient? I want to go fast. I want to build fast. So what's most efficient? But I think they think it's inadequate, or they think they're weak. And then also ego. It's like them putting on the hat that they know everything and they can't be taught anything from someone that's younger or whatever it is. And those are the biggest wealth traps, of thinking you know everything and like not asking for help. And now it's like, we have advisors, right? We have advisors and a counsel in life. And like you said, money or problems and money, right? Or money and people can solve any problems. And so I think it was the difference, Ratmir, I'm going to forget the quote, but there was a difference between like millionaires and billionaires. And the millionaire asked, what did the millionaire ask? He's off camera. What did the millionaire? Yeah, the millionaire. So the difference between millionaires and billionaires is the millionaire asks, what do I need to do? The billionaire is, who do I need to hire?
Who, not how.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So same thing. But I think people think it's weak. You know, even in relationships, right? It's like people are like, I want a relationship coach. And it's like, well, you have a coach for your money. He's like, don't call it a coach, just call it an advisor, a relationship advisor. Yeah, a consultant, right? Whatever meaning makes you feel good. But yeah, bro, I think people just feel like it's weak. They I need to do it on my own. Like, they're trying to prove something. It's like, I don't want to do it on my own.
And I think if you look at the three reasons why people aren't successful, most people would say is probably either they're arrogant, stupid, or lazy. I'd say most people aren't stupid. I'd say some people are lazy, but I'd say most people are arrogant. And that's the reason they don't, because they're not like open-minded to other people's thought processes, or taking advice from someone who's maybe stronger in a certain area than they are. which is ultimately the thing that's going to shoot them in the foot and not allow them to progress how they want.
100%. And to combat that as a communicator, as a coach, say you're going to facilitate it or do a keynote, whatever it is, I am always pre-framing. I'm always setting the frame so they're bought into it, right? And so, I'll talk about the law of exposure. Law of exposure states the moment I'm exposed, I can never see life the same. With your permission, I ask for permission, totally guard down. With your permission, could I expose you to some information that could probably change their life? Yes, great.
Sure.
Are you willing to play all in? Yes, great. Now they're bought in. So there's also an art, though, for the facilitator to make sure that people get bought in and their arrogance doesn't get in the way. So I also I'll take accountability for your arrogance and make sure that I do a good job of pre-framing so your mind is open.
You've spoken on some of the biggest stages in the world. What's the most impactful, memorable moment you've had?
That's a good question. I'll give you a bad one and I'll give you a good one. Okay. Does that work?
Yeah.
And so I think the greatest moment of my life was 15,000 people with Tony Robbins in Miami Heat Arena. And I was anchoring the importance of decisions, right? Indecisiveness is poverty thinking. We're all here because we made a decision. Your life can change in a moment of decision. And then I looked down at my parents who maybe been to like 3 or 4 speaking engagements of mine. And I said, the reason why I'm here is because my parents decided to bring me into the world when everyone told them they shouldn't. And I had them stand up and the whole crowd clap for them. And I got to thank my parents for having faith in me and going forth with the pregnancy. And so that was a really impactful moment for me. Parents are crying, I'm crying, everybody's crying. It's a great time. On the flip side, like a negative, but for me, it was a massive learning lesson. When I first started speaking, I was 20 years old and we were living in Tampa at the time. And I got picked up for an event for a breakout room, right? For people who don't know what a breakout room is, there's a main stage and then there's like little workshops, tracking. And I got picked up for this breakout room probably like 2 days before the event. We were so excited. I had merchandise. It was the first time I was going to have merchandise I was going to sell there. I go to this breakout room. There's like 100 seats, these really nice white seats set up. And like 4 people showed up. And that version of Nick was like, what the what do you mean 4? You know who I am? I wasn't nobody. You know who I am? Big head, like so stupid. Why am I even doing this? And I served from a place of just like, it wasn't good. And after that, I went home. I'm sure my homeboys gave me a pep talk or digged into me, and I reflected on that. And I promised myself I would never be that man again. I promised myself that I don't care if there's 2 people in the room or 15,000 people in the room. Those are human beings that gave you their 2 most valuable assets, your time and your energy, and they can never get that back. How dare you? And so that was a moment for me where I promised I'd never become that person again, and I'd always be grateful regardless of how many people are in that room. And if I can be grateful for 1 person and 15,000 people, I can serve from the highest place.
You've done a lot of work with Tony Robbins, correct?
Yes.
What's the biggest thing you've learned from him?
That if you think you're committed to mastery, you're not. Look at that guy, right? And the reason why I say that is because I think he's 63, 64 years old, and he's still out speaking people like you and I, working like a dog, right? And I think a few things when you analyze that behavior and that identity. The first thing is, and you mentioned it earlier, is you have to have a really compelling vision of why you're building. Because if it's just money, you're not going to have the emotional stamina. Tracking? And so you have to have a deep, meaningful reason of why you're doing what you're doing so it could pull you to do the things that you don't want to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is modeling. Modeling. Success leaves clues, right? And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just need to make it Charlie. You just need to make it Nick. You need to find someone who's doing the thing that you want to do, learn from them so you can collapse time. I think the third thing would be the big C word, not the one most people use, but the other one, compassion. Meaning, as a coach and as a facilitator, a lot of people, I'd say most people, the moment they feel judged, you close the door to transformation. And so people may complain and they may have excuses and they may have specific stories, but if you can lead with compassion and then bring the coaching, you'll have a totally different result with your clients. And so compassion, understanding their model of the world and why they operate there, and having just empathy for their problems and their challenges. And I would say the fourth thing, which is massively impactful, is Tony will talk about, I have 40 different companies and 8 billion in revenue and whatever it is. And the reason that the way that he did that was he became such a great human and so great at transformation that, like I said earlier, he would give breakthroughs to high level people and they would just bring him in. And so my intention is to serve my way to the top and give high-level individuals gifts that they cannot buy. So it opens up the door for collaboration, points, equity, partnerships. But I think everything has to do with, can you provide massive value? And if you can provide massive value, you can have anything you want.
Who do you think's had more impact than Tony Robbins?
Alive? That's a really good question. Me. No, I'm just kidding. That's a hard question.
It's debatable though, right? You can't, it's not an obvious standout.
No.
Which is then a big claim to have to say how many
people.
Yeah, it's like how many people's like lives you changed.
Yeah, I would say Jordan Peterson. I would say, but its impact is all the meaning you give it.
Yeah,
you know. So I'll give you, it's all fake anyway, right? And so I would say, like, following wise, like people like Jordan Peterson or a Joe Rogan. Some people don't align with those, or like Donald. Like there's people who just mega influences, but at the end of the day, like you said, it's all perception. But I can say firmly, alive, there is no one that's impacted as many souls living right now than Tony.
And I think the fact that he still has the drive to do it when he has nothing to prove and just does it for the love of the game, I'd almost give it the sporting equivalent of Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, dude's still playing football, he's now 39, 40. Like, got all the money in the world, do whatever you want, and he's still like every day. And I get bored of like training in the gym, let alone like playing football 4 times a week for 25 years, however long, like longer.
Yeah.
Which I think for me, that's where I look for people who've like done something at like the best in the world for a long period of time. That says a huge amount about that individual and like the nuclear drive they have within them to like go and not just be successful for themselves, but set new standards for other people.
100%. And it's so funny you brought up Ronaldo, because even coming over here, I'm always looking for someone that's going to raise my identity and someone that I can compare my standards to. And I looked at Ronaldo and I was like, just look at the brand. I'm just like, just dialed in, right? Like for me, I went fully sober. So no drinking, no smoking, right? Just shisha. But other than that, like no drugs, no alcohol. And I knew that it would not only raise my identity, but it would build up just the brand. It's like most humans, regardless of where you live, have some sort of vice. So if I eliminate those two things, like I have an advantage, right? I'm not saying everybody needs to do that, but for me, it makes me feel good. Same thing with Ronaldo, is like shredded all the time, right? Now I'm sure he enjoys food, but he's such a machine in the way that his body is so programmed with the specific nutrition and his training that he can eat what he wants here and there, but he's just so dialed in. So I was like, Ronaldo standard. That's where I want to go.
And I think for like everyone listening to this, I think you need to have like a maximalist mindset. That's something I really think about a lot at the moment. So I want to be fucking best at everything. It's like, how can I push myself more? Like, can I get up half an hour earlier, like read a bit more, improve my mind? Can I get a bit more work done in the day? Can I be more efficient and squeeze more stuff in? Like we mentioned earlier about how dope Dubai is, because you can just go and just get loads of stuff done. You're like conquering the world day by day. And for me, that's like the purpose of life, is how much fun, exciting shit can I fit in where I can have a rock and roll life, but also help other people to have the lives they want. Yeah,
for sure. It's so cool. And I'm still learning that, like, work-life balance, right? It's like grind and then play and then grind, not feeling guilty for playing, right? Like all of that. I think we all go through that. I just have a set of, even before I moved here, about 2 months before I moved here, I literally wrote in my notes, I was like, Nick, new identity upgrade for Dubai, and I was already prepping for it. So it's like sobriety's on there, no pornography, minimum 30-minute workout, maybe 1 flex meal a week, which I was texting you, like, yo, where do I go eat?
Where did you go?
What?
Where did you go?
Well, I was actually at an exotic farm. It worked out great. I was at an exotic animal farm in Abu Dhabi with some locals, and they just fed me local food, and I ate some donuts and cookies and lemur. I didn't eat lemur. I was playing with lemurs, so like it just worked out, because in that culture there's like eat, and I'm like, all right. Luckily it's my cheat meal, so I'll have to pick some places next week. It's coming up again, but yeah. So I just have non-negotiables, and those are my identity upgrades. So I was already preparing. I knew that if I wanted to get to the next level in Dubai, it's going to require a greater version of Nick. And only Nick's going to do it for Nick, right? Only Nick's going to raise his identity. So I already created an identity upgrade, and I was already knocking off non-negotiables. So by the time that I got here, I was many months sober, many months without pornography, many months dialed into nutrition. I was like already ready. So yeah.
And it's interesting for you to say that, because people will look at you and be like, you're successful already. What was the thing that made you realize you needed to almost kill the other version of you to then get to the next level up?
It's a great question. I think I want more. I want to squeeze more out of me. I looked into the mirror and was like, this is not the best you. You're not dialed you're not as jacked as you want to be, right? And I get there's always a next level, but I wanted more out of myself, and I wanted to feel better, and that's what non-negotiables do. Is regardless of how business and life goes, if I get my workout in, my meditation in, I stay sober, and I do the other things, still did my thing, and I feel really good about it. So I think as men, we're conquerors, and we're always trying to conquer the next version of ourselves. And so I'm always trying to kill off old version of Nick and build the next one. And on the side of communicating or coaching and leading, I can only heal others as deep as I'm willing to heal myself. I can only lead others as much as I'm willing to be led. And so I want to have deep perspective so I can give you better breakthroughs. And I feel really terrible if I'm telling you to do something and I ain't doing it.
And that inside will deep down eat at you and rot you from the inside. And I think that's where that will also come across your lack of congruency. And that's a huge thing. You've obviously recently moved from the US to Dubai. What's been the big change in the initial experience coming here?
I would say the biggest change is in Dubai, it is way more forward thinking, and they execute faster, and deals are done faster. There's less red tape in the most empowering way, right? And so there's less like gatekeeping, and they don't move slow, or they don't have to go up a bunch of chains of commands. It's just like, oh, connect with this guy, this is the guy, boom, boom, boom. Like things move faster, right? And also, it's very new here. And so there's a lot of opportunity. Things aren't as saturated. Don't come here. Stay over there. Wherever you're listening, don't know. I'm just kidding, right? But I just think ultimately the energy is more collaborative rather than like, no, this is mine. Like everybody wants to see you win. And the other thing is the majority of people in this space in Dubai, at least this is my perception, and I'm new, is you can't flex. No one flexes money.
Because you play a game, you can't win.
Yeah. And everybody has some sort of level of money. And so relationships aren't built off like cloud and what watch you have. It's more on like, what's your mission and what's your integrity? And if it aligns, let's have a great relationship. And that's refreshing, bro.
I think it's a different game here. And my gut feeling for being here for nearly 3 years now is that 89% of the population are expats. So therefore, everyone has been new here at some point, and probably a lot of people have only been here for within less than 3 years. So therefore, everyone's very open-minded and very willing to help other people, and people are aware that, like, okay, I might meet Nick, but then Nick might know someone else that I need to know, and it's like the connections are wild, because generally anyone who lives in Dubai has a higher level about them. They have a lot of like status in the thing they can do and high connections. They're probably in the best in their field of what they do, which means then every person you speak to in the elevator, in the shopping mall, whatever, is probably a good connection you should speak to, which is then almost like the melting pot of the best of the world in terms of society. It's
crazy. No, this place sucks. Don't come here, But yeah, I agree. And proximity is power, right? So when you're around people that everybody's doing something or they're achieving something or they're hustling and they're trying to create something, it's just really good energy, bro. And so I follow energy, and I feel like I was divinely guided and divinely protected and brought out here for a reason.
What's the first thing that gave you the idea to move to Dubai?
The first idea?
Yeah. Because, all credit to you, I said this before, it's like, you said you were moving here, I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, people say it all the time. I'm like, yeah. And then like, oh yeah, we're moving like the 1st of October. I was like, oh, he's actually doing it. I was like, sick.
Yeah. So ask the question again.
What was, like, a lot of people say they're going to move to Dubai.
Yeah.
But then you actually went and fucking did it. Like, what was the first thing that gave you the idea of moving here?
Ratmir. And so I've built this brand and this empire with my brother and my business partner, and we're both visionaries and anticipating things. And he just got a download. Was like, we should go check out Dubai. And then we booked that trip to Dubai. We were here for like a week. And then we experienced it, like law of exposure. Once you're exposed, you cannot be unexposed. We experienced networking on yachts, and we experienced the top tier service in the restaurants, and we experienced the cleanliness, and we experienced the culture, and the even just being on this side of the world and being able to unlock all these countries that we've never been to that are new to us. I was like, done. You know, we're single. We're both single. Had nothing tied to us, and we're like, let's do it. Let's just ride out.
Do you think more people from the US in the future will keep moving this way?
100%. Yeah, I think you'll see where it goes over there. But I think people that want to expand, and the more, you know, even me, my role here is to help promote accessibility, inclusivity, and the quality of life here, and that it's a really good place, and to kind of eliminate the stigma that maybe people still have around the, you know, the Middle East or Dubai in itself. Even my parents are like, what are you doing? What do you mean? And I'm like, no, just come out here. And so I think people only know what they know, and the more they get out of their comfort zone and just like test the waters, you know, like once you come here, though, it's a wrap.
So I remember even being in the US and people like, I was at Eric's event, and people were like, you're the guy from Dubai, like it's a really weird thing. And then people would ask me things like, are women allowed to drive? And like, I was like, yeah, people are allowed to drive. Like, people think it's this super extreme state where it couldn't be any further from the truth. And actually the reality is you have more freedom in Dubai than anywhere else in the world. Like, you can pretty much do whatever you want as long as you stay within the rules. And then the beauty of the place is the safest place in the world, which actually is a dangerous thing in some respect. When you go back to Europe or the US or wherever, you're suddenly reminded very quickly, okay, like, I'm not in Dubai anymore. I need to be aware of what I'm doing.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's just a level of standard. And that's what I think is really beautiful, because there are specific rules, right? But no one breaks the rules because there's consequences. And I think rules are set in place to have specific standards and a specific quality of life. And when rules get bent, places get jaded. And so this place has just a very high standard. There's specific rules. But ultimately, if you live a good, healthy, heart-centered life and have morals, you're good, you know. But if you're sketchy, like, just stay over there in the sketchy places.
If I could ask you one last question, what would be the biggest thing you want to achieve by 2030?
2030.
5.5 years. 5 years.
5 years? Okay, yeah, a few things. I'll just rattle off, and probably some things scare me. I'll start with, I would say 5 years, 200 million. Well, I don't know how that works, you know, and what that looks like. I'll just let the mystical take care of that. But at 5 years, you know, worth 200, couple hundred million, 200, 300 million. I would say you said 10 years?
5 years. 5 years.
5 years?
2030.
Okay. I don't know, maybe family? That's scary to say. I don't know. Maybe I got a little Nick running around. So maybe a family. I would say big business, big leading, best shape of my life, deep meaningful brotherhood. I mean, we're already doing that stuff. I would say really helping the city and UAE with what we're doing with the plan of inclusivity and accessibility. I would also say bringing all of the great ideas also to Saudi and Qatar and Kuwait, all the upcoming places as well, helping those places develop as well. I don't know, bro. That's who knows, but definitely not being this version of Nick. So ideally, when you see me in 5 years, I don't recognize you. Well, I have no legs and one arm, right? You're recognizing me, but like totally different identity, totally different proximity, totally different level of spiritual growth, evolution. But I see just big businesses, big empire, a portfolio all around the world where we can just go all around the world, private plane. I know it's all materialistic stuff. Sue me. You know, like that's the things that are driving me, but also my whole entire bloodline taken care of. Ultimately, two things. The first thing is pain is passed down the bloodline until someone steps up and feels it. I'm the one in my family that changed the whole entire bloodline. So that's my main mission. And so I would say 5 years, generations are taken care of because the guy with no legs and an arm decided to step up.
I think it's a very empowering moment to finish on.
Thank you, brother.
Big thank you, Nick. Where's the best place for people to find more about you?
Yeah, so Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Nick Santonastasso. But if you type in Nick, Santo, I'm the most handsome guy with no legs, one arm, and all the tattoos. You can't miss me.
Big thank you. If everyone enjoyed the podcast, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe, comment below any questions, and see you next episode very soon.
Send a love.
Good, dude. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
That's really, really good.